Give me your lunch money.
ENA. You may have heard of it. If you haven't, I highly recommend checking it out. But here's a brief explanation. ENA is a weird series of animated YouTube videos in a similar style to that of old PC games. It started back in 2020, but it really started gaining traction with its third episode, Temptation Stairway, which has gained well over 17 million views since its release. The creator, JoelG, has since released a fourth episode for the video series and decided to make a game based on the series, but with an entirely brand new story. And I'm pretty excited for the game. I wonder if there's a release date yet. Hello, I'm a game dev, or at least a beginner, and just as any other beginner developer, I've decided to willingly put myself through pain. Well, hopefully not too much pain. While we wait for the release of the ENA game, I've decided to take it upon myself to fill in the gap of ENA content, but within a time limit. My goal is to make a game within 2 months. I know 2 months to you may not sound very painful to make a short little game, but you clearly aren't a game dev, or at least not a beginner like me. Anyways, the basic plan is to make a game very much inspired by ENA, as well as LSD Dream Emulator, an obscure PS1 game, and liminal spaces. If you're interested in any of those, I highly recommend subscribing to be kept up to date on the development of the game. I know that may sound a bit cliche to say, but I genuinely don't want y'all to miss out. Anyways, the game will be entered into things called game jams. This is where that time limit comes from. Game jams are challenges where the host gives a time limit and a theme. Game developers will then have to make a game about this theme before time runs out. The two I'm entering into are Liminal Game Jam 2024 and the Weirdcore Jam. The Weirdcore Jam lasts 2 months, and I think that's about the time I want to work on this game. The other one, the Liminal Game Jam, doesn't actually start for a good few weeks after the Weirdcore Jam, but they do allow projects to be started early, so I'll definitely be taking advantage of that. The game won't be a long game, so I definitely won't be spoiling much of the gameplay or story. But what I will say is that they're both fairly simplistic, nothing too deep. That's probably a good start for my first public game. Oh yeah, did I mention this will be my first time releasing a game? That's how inexperienced I am. I'm gonna need some help.
You called, boss?
So, unfortunately, I couldn't just jump into the development of the game, since the Weirdcore Jam actually prohibited working on it before the jam started. But they did permit brainstorming, and so for the first week before the jam started, me and my friends got into some calls and discussed ideas for the story, the characters, and the locations. In hindsight, this was probably a good thing, since prior, I didn't really have any ideas for the game. However, by the time the waiting period was over, we had a pretty solid outline for the game.
How about we had the Planet of the Apes?
I won't spoil very much of what we came up with, especially since it's subject to change, but I would like to document my journey in developing this game, thus making these devlogs. There won't be very many of these videos, since I can't imagine making any more than 2 or 3 of these in the same month as I'm making the game, but hopefully that's enough. Oh, and just a heads up, the mic quality might change a lot throughout this video. This is only my first YouTube video, so I don't have much of a professional setup. Right now I'm recording through my phone, and randomly I might switch to Discord for commentary, so the audio quality might not be the best. I hope you can forgive me for that, but as of right now, there's nothing I can do about it. Anyways, one of the first things that we decided to add to our game was a mall. The mall would be an oddly empty location that would fit perfectly into the theme of liminal spaces. I was pretty excited to make this mall, so I launched up my map editor and got to work. Originally, I was going to do commentary over this time-lapse and just talk about the overall process of making the map, but I realized that might not be as entertaining. Instead, I'm just going to talk about general topics about this YouTube channel and the game. First of all, everything up until this point has been scripted. The words I'm saying aren't written down on a Google Doc as they were before. So what do you think? Do you like it better or worse? Is it more natural? Let me know. The next topic I want to talk about is just feedback. If you have any opinions on the game or the YouTube channel, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions on how I did certain things, feel free to ask those too. If there's enough questions, I'll be holding an FAQ in my next devlog, which will probably be the last one for this game. The last thing I want to mention before we get back into the video is that I may or may not enter the game into the liminal game jam. This is because it ends earlier than the weirdcore jam, so if any extra time is needed, I'll be able to get an extra few days. That's about all I wanted to say. Hopefully that made this segment just a little bit more tolerable. Well, this is what I have for the mall. I know it may not look like a mall, but that's just because I haven't done any texturing, aside from the floor and the water. It'll look better in the final game, I promise. I decided to focus a bit more on the coding side of the game, as I knew this would be the most important. I already had some pretty good code for the player, taken from the asset library of Godot. I did make some little modifications, but for the most part it stayed the same. In a future update, I'll probably give it some better code, as this one isn't perfect. The next feature that I wanted to work on was NPC interaction. I wanted to make it so that if you pressed E while facing a character, it would activate the cutscene, or whatever interaction it may be. This may sound like the most complex part yet, but so far it's actually the easiest. I found a good YouTube tutorial on how to make interaction systems for first-person games. I'll link it in the description if any of you want to check it out. However, I ran into a small issue with it. The text box that says "Press E to interact" was a little bit small if you made the window full screen. If you've ever used the Godot engine, you might remember that there's a project setting that fixes this issue. However, this setting is for 2D only games. It is not designed for 3D first-person games. I believe the way this setting works is it tricks Godot into thinking that the window is a smaller size than it actually is. As a side effect, Godot thinks that your mouse is moving a shorter distance than it actually is. This unfortunately messes with the mouse sensitivity and makes it very sluggish to move your camera around. Apparently, I'm not the only one with this issue, as there are many posts online of people explaining the same problems. I searched through numerous posts, but couldn't find anything that would help. I've been making my game on Godot 3, so one of the first ideas I had was to move to Godot 4 and see if the problem was there. Lo and behold, it prevailed. Out of options, I knew there was only one thing left to do. Fine, I'll do it myself. I actually got a pretty nice system working, the downside being that I need to create an individual script for every single GUI element. For those of you who have never made a game before, GUI is basically anything on the screen. It stands for Graphical User Interface, but of course I'll just say GUI. This was the most annoying piece of technology that I have ever coded. In concept, it's actually pretty simple, but actually executing it was a very difficult process, at least for me, being a beginner. All the scripts do is get the width or the height of the window, do crazy math with it, and then give the GUI elements the answers. I won't get into the details of how the math works, but if you really want to check it out, I have a link in the description that goes to all the code of the game. Hopefully you can learn something from my code, and I hope in the future I can make a plugin for Godot that makes GUI scaling a lot easier. But until then, you'll have to implement it yourself. Anyways, the system I created won't just be used for that one text box. It'll probably be used on every single GUI element in the game. For example, the cutscenes that you'll get. The way these cutscenes will work is that you interact with an NPC and then the cutscene will start, kinda like how it is in ENA. This was the next feature I began implementing. I started by creating a rectangle of where the cutscene would display. Then I created text boxes for subtitles. I applied my GUI scaler system to both of them, and began creating code to display an animation, as well as changing the subtitles. After a while, I was able to get it working. Here, take a look. Obviously, this is just a test NPC and a test cutscene, and they most definitely won't show up in the final game. But I figure that it was cool to show. As of posting the video, this is about all I have of the game. Of course, more is sure to come. Keep an eye on this channel, and I'll probably have an announcement video for when the game releases. That's about all for now, so I'll see you next time. Hey, what'd you think of the video? It probably wasn't a good idea for me to make this video while I'm making the game, as that surely took some time away. But I hope it entertained y'all. Before you go, what do you think of my character? This is probably only a temporary character, but who knows, maybe it'll stick around. It's very much inspired by Scarombo Bomblo, which is Funky's character. Can you see the resemblance? Oh, one last thing. My friend ImSpooky is making a YouTube channel too. He told me that he's gonna make a video on the current state of Spider-Man comics, so if you're interested in that stuff, definitely go check it out. Link in the description. Okay, bye!